who are calling Black history critical race theory. There is intentionality there, because John F. Kennedy, and I write about this in the book, Kennedy talks about Reconstruction, how he had learned the Dunning School of Reconstruction. This was the lost cause history by a racist Columbia University professor, Archibald Dunning. And that Dunning School is the birth of a nation, Gone with the Wind version of Reconstruction, that black men were raping white women, the Klan were heroes, and Reconstruction was a bad idea because black people were savages unfit for citizenship. John F. Kennedy learned this at Harvard in the 1930s. What shocks him out of it is when he's dealing with Governor Ross Barnett of Mississippi, when James Meredith is trying to desegregate Ole Miss in 1962, and like 2 or 3 people die in the rioting in Ole Miss. Bobby Kennedy and the president have to deputize over 500 marshals. At times, there are troops there. And John Kennedy tells Bobby Kennedy that Thaddeus Stevens was right. You know, he had learned the Dunning School of History that white Republicans were just frothing at the mouth crazies who were trying to damage white Southerners and Southern pride and tradition. And then he meets up a bunch of white Southerners in Mississippi who are calling him and his brother traitors and everything under the sun but a child of God. And he's saying, wow, this is what was happening. This is Jack Kennedy. This is what was happening 100 years ago. And those are some of the experiences that push him by 1963 to say that, you know, racial discrimination should be a thing of the past. He talks about the Emancipation Proclamation, but in that 17-minute speech, he talks about, he uses social scientific data. He talks about black unemployment rates, rates of black children dying as infants. And he says that America, for all its hopes, for all its boasts, will not be free from the bonds of injustice until all people are free, right? And he says that there's a revolution happening, one that can be either violent or peaceful, right? And he says those who do nothing invite shame and violence, those who act boldly recognize right as well as reality, right? And that's the first time a US president, June 11, 1963, comes out so boldly for racial justice. Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural, which I love, is still elliptical. It's very, very elliptical because the boldest part of that second inaugural, which is only like 87 words, is when he says that if every drop of blood that was squeezed from the bondsman through the lash of a slave master, and every dollar that was created by their labor has to be returned and repaid back in bloodshed, right? The verdict of the Lord and of all people are going to be that, you know, God's justice is mighty and true, right? Is righteous and true. So that's as close as Abraham Lincoln really comes to saying, hey, all this bloodshed has happened because we did it to ourselves. That's as close as he comes. Second inaugural, that's March 4th, 1865. He's dead 5 weeks later. So we just don't know what would have happened. So Lincoln's assassination is really catastrophic, not just for black people, but for the nation.
We've got people. Well, I think I'm supposed to wrap things up and open up the conversation perhaps for informal chats as we get the book signing. But let us again thank Dr. Joseph for...
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I just want to say that this is a book that somehow manages to combine difficult histories with this compellingly optimistic note at the end, which I was not expecting. I will just tell you that. I was reading through it, I'm like, I don't quite know what you think. And I was a little surprised at the end, and that's a testament to the storytelling, the capacity of activism, the potential for this difficult truth telling, and a belief perhaps that people will hear it. And I just pleasantly surprised.
No, you know, I think I've always been a relentless optimist, even as I understand the challenges we face, and we have tremendous opportunities as well. But my optimism is rooted in the work that people do, right? And I think the more you're involved in trying to build up racial justice, social justice for all people, the deeper I think your hope and faith become, because there are some victories. And I do think that having 25 million people out in the streets in 2020 matters. We haven't gotten the legislative, George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, the For the People Act. But look, without what occurred in 2020, you wouldn't have had not only President Biden and Kamala Harris, but Warnock and Ossoff, and be able to get the American Rescue Plan, the infrastructure, debt relief. I think those are all connected to not only Black Lives Matter movement, but the Women's March and the March for Our Lives, and Dreamers and Muslims and queer folks. So I just think that what we're not doing is acknowledging some of the victories, which is bad. I think what we have to do is understand that this is a marathon, right? And I think my mom always explained that to me, getting back to my mother, that you are in it for the long haul. She was in it for the long haul, right? And so there are successes, there are setbacks, but you have to be hopeful. And Mariam Kaba, I teach her book, We Do This Until We Set Ourselves Free, and she's from Guinea, West Africa, first generation American, and that's where Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture ended up. And she's a prisoner abolitionist. She's a mass incarceration activist, anti-that. And what she talks about is hope as a discipline, hope as a discipline. And I think, she's right. I think that hope is a discipline that's based in our own personal and political faith, but also our own actions, right? So the more active we are, the more hopeful we are. I don't think I've met folks who've been in the struggle for social justice, who remain active, who aren't optimistic. And Angela Davis talks about how we've never been able to afford cynicism, and it doesn't mean that we can't be very, very sober about the challenges we're facing. And in the book I am, but you can't be cynical, and that's why I push back in the book against even friends of mine who in 2016 was like there was no choice, and I pushed back against that. I had a critique of Hillary Clinton, and I voted for Hillary Clinton. And I told folks at the time that we can't not do this if we care about human beings. So we understood what was going to happen with ICE. We understood what was going to happen with judges, right? And I pushed back against people who were so vain, who were so narcissistic as to say, oh no, it's the lesser of two evils, right? No, these were clear-cut choices, and we have to, if we're saying we're going to work on behalf of people, we have to work on behalf of people and not abstractions. You don't not vote for Hillary because of your own vanity and your own ego, right? If you really care about people. So I push back against anybody who's filled with cynicism, who's filled with that kind of notion of giving up, right? Because that's all cynicism is. It's saying you're giving up, right? And for those of us who are parents, who are caring for our parents, who are community caretakers, whether we have biological kin or not, it's so important to be hopeful, right? The reason why we're fighting for American democracy is because we have an aspirational country, this undiscovered country that we're trying to create, and that at times we co-create in miniature, right? At times we have transcendent moments. I talk about the Black Trans Lives Matter March in Brooklyn and other marches and other periods. I talk about Audre Lorde. I talk about different moments that are these sublime and transcendent and graceful moments, right? And those should give us all hope, right? So we can be truthful about the challenges we face, but also be energized by the opportunities that lay ahead. And so we've got to have hope, and we have to make that choice every single day, right? And we have to listen to each other. We have to listen to other people's narratives, their stories, because their stories and their lives matter as much as our own. That's the whole thing. So if you're a Christian, you've got to listen to Jews and Muslims and atheists and agnostics. If you're straight, you've got to listen to queer and genderqueer folks. If you're Black, you've got to listen to people who are white and Asian and Latinx and indigenous. We've got to listen to each other, and that's the only way we are going to really truly transform this country, right? And that's the whole idea of building that beloved community that's free of racial and economic injustice and free of a politics that marginalizes each other, right? And the reason we marginalize each other, we lack empathy and vulnerability with each other, right? Because if you love the person next to you, you're not marginalizing. You're not, even if you disagree with them, you might have a real big political disagreement, but you're willing to listen to their story and try to understand where they're coming from.
Y'all. So I just want to say, Ken, that Rachel and Misty and our staff and I, we are so honored that you took time out of your busy, packed schedule as a instructor and teacher and the other places you're traveling to talk about your book. And thank you so much for coming.
Oh, no, thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, when we dreamed about a bookstore, these kinds of conversations were what we dreamed about, right, Rachel? Yeah. So that you all showed up and we had this great moment is more than we could have hoped for. So thank you. And that you just took us at our word that we were going to be all right, you know. And he didn't know us, you know. So I want to take just a minute to thank Shelley Hayes McMahon for the connection here with Dr. Joseph.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you.
Yeah. We appreciate you so much. And she's got this fabulous jumpsuit on over there. You'll need to take a look. And I want to give a little shout out to Dr. Melissa Burns, who connected you and I and said that you two would be a great pair. And she was right. She couldn't be here because Felix has a bedtime of 7 p.m. So that's why she's not here.
I understand.
Right? So I want to tell you a couple of things. Dr. Joseph is going to sign the books. Brooke is at the cash wrap, and you need to purchase the book first before you get it signed. That's the rule. Sorry. But we know we tore the store apart more than normal to get everybody in this time. So we have a little gift for you on the way out, a $5 off coupon your next visit here, whatever you want. So we'll have the store put back together, I promise. And I just want to say the bistro's open if you want to get a little snack before you go. And I've been told to lead with pie every time. There's pie.
I love pie.
Well, I love pie too.
Pie.
Yeah.
Love pie.
And if we got 50 books. We ordered more. They didn't get here in time. So if you don't get a book this evening, we have a sheet for you to fill out, and we'll save you one when it gets here later this week or next week at the latest. So I see a lot of friends out there, and thank you for coming. I see a lot of people I didn't know, and welcome, and enjoy yourselves, and have a good and safe evening, okay? Good night.
Thank you. Yes.
I wouldn't see jokes. I do like to smile.